Welcome to the Neutral Zone, MauiNeutralZone.com. I'm Jason Schwartz, your host. We are on KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. We're also seen on Akaku Maui Community Media, and we also live on YouTube. All the shows live on YouTube. You can go to MauiNeutralZone.com and watch all our shows and get dizzy because there's so many of them. We are now in 2021. We are in month number 3. I can count 3. And I think we're up to show like 120 or 121. And many of you have heard that over the last while, I started getting guests, and then I realized, oh, these people are in my Mankind Project group. And I thought, well, I maybe should start a thing called Mankind Project Guys or whatever. But I found that Mankind is a men's group, if you will. Women get together all the time, men not so often. So something that is us looking at the future and looking at ourselves and how the future goes, that's what that was. And in that group, I found some great people. And there's one guy that I knew before. I've known for a number of years, and I want to say I've seen him grown up, but he's a grown guy. He's big like me and you. Although I hope children are watching. I think this is an adult show because I was told you can't have more than 15 or 20 seconds and the kids are changing channels. So for all of you that keep your attention, I am with a gentleman that some of you know for years, David Litman. Now, I could talk about him, but he's right here, so let's talk to him. Hi, David. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Got my coffee ready to go.
Yeah, perfect. Now, as I'm looking at your screen, you know, everyone knows now in this COVID time, everyone's on Zoom. I see unless I have my glasses, TJYF. That sounds too good. It's Friday. No.
Right? No, nothing to do with Friday, fortunately.
So I know that you're going to tell us about that, but I want our audience to know David Litman is really a wonderful guy. I met him and I thought, man, this guy's really sharp. I don't know what he does for a living. He was doing all kinds of things, but I thought, man, this guy is really perceptive, and I like the way he puts pieces together. Just an observation. And over the years, then I met this beautiful woman, and I said, oh, she's a Litman too. Not his sister. That's his wife. Wow. Good choice. His wife, Christina. And then I met his daughter and his son. I said, wow, this guy is amazing. What a beautiful man with a great family. And
well, then you met my mother-in-law.
Then I met your mother-in-law.
She was a force of nature. Yeah.
She was a force of nature too. So it was just, a great thing. But you always stood out as somebody I thought, there's a great family and he's a great guy, but this guy has a lot of sharp. And now you're working with TJYF.
Yeah.
I'm laughing when I say that, but why don't you tell us, David, what you're doing now? Because I think you keep adding levels of greatness in your resume, and then we'll go to talk about you. But what are you doing these days?
Well, thanks. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's funny. I hadn't really thought about the fact that it's kind of like a Thank God It's Friday vibe, with TJYF. It certainly is a lot more meaningful than that, right? So Teran James Young Foundation. It's a privately funded nonprofit that we technically we just were officially launched on January 1st this year. It takes a long time to get a nonprofit established, as we found out. It's primarily funded by a woman named Teran James and her husband, Genesis Young. And they had a child named Teran who unfortunately passed away at birth. And still, though, his presence is such a big force and influence, the spirit of him is such a big force and influence in their lives. And Teran is still in contact with that energy. And so they wanted to honor him by naming the nonprofit after him. So we honor his memory and his continued presence in a different form, if you will. And it's all about serving youth. That was really their primary purpose. Genesis has a mission statement. Mankind Project, we all have missions, right? And his mission is to see peace on earth before he dies. And it's a big mission. And so we have a number of projects that we do, a number of programs under the foundation. One of them is nonviolent communication for the next generation. So trying to teach the next generation how to be peaceful and how to have better relationships. We do that in the schools. And I've been involved with that program. But as in the course of doing that, they realized that there was a meeting where all the different agencies, a bunch of different agencies, local agencies and nonprofits got together. And in the course of conversing, they realized, there's no short-term sanctuary for teens on the island. So let's say a teen runs away from home, police pick them up. There's no one to bring them on Maui. There used to be years ago, but for various reasons, apparently it was closed down and never reopened. And that was many years ago. And so Solera and Genesis said, well, what if we build one? So, and they had the resources. They stepped up and decided to buy a building and hire people and let's create a short-term sanctuary for teens. So it's a program that Genesis and I know each other through Mankind Project, and he basically asked me to help out and help run the shelter. So that's our other program. And the idea is that the teens are only there for a short period of time, but because they're going to come and get to know us, we'll build a relationship, have trust with them ideally. That we could be a hub for other services and other programs. So we can be a source for referral to all the wonderful programs that Maui offers to youth. But if there's needs that aren't being met, we could also step up and create those programs to help meet those needs. And it was a great opportunity for me. As you know, I've lived on Maui for almost 11 years now and done a variety of things, as many people do on the island, to be able to live here. And this is the first time in my life I really felt like my job is, fully in line. I've done some part-time work with other nonprofits, but this is now full-time and in line with my mission and my vision. So it's so wonderful to be able to come to work every day and feel like I'm doing something that contributes, and it's really a value to me and to the community. And allows me to get my licensure finally. I got my degree in counseling psychology about, 20 years ago, and I've worked in the field, but never really gotten the formal LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist license. So I'm in the process of doing that now as well, and seeing clients on the side. Yeah, so it's been a wonderful journey so far.
Well, and it's interesting that I didn't realize. So that was your degree, because you have that form down. It's like you listen, like you're gathering information, you deliver it in a really good way. Well, so you do therapy for people as well.
I do, yeah, private practice, yeah.
Oh, independent of this.
Yeah, on the side, independent. So it keeps me really busy, unfortunately, because I have the full-time job, and then I'm trying to do clients and get my hours towards licensure. I also do some contract work for Maui Youth and Family Services. I work with teens. They have a program that they do funded by the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division called Intensive Independent Living Skills. So work with the youth to help them develop skills to adult, essentially. So that's kind of fun too. I do that part-time too. So yeah, I'm wearing a few hats right now. And very, very busy.
And it's in the sort of, I want to say, in the vein of a Mankind Project, because we all, as we grow through our lives and hopefully gain wisdom and insights, and we're there to be able to be the foundation for those that come after us and be that level of support. So you're doing it with the younger generation that are getting toward full adulthood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, adolescence, that awkward, rough period of anybody's life, really. That sometimes one of the hardest times in some ways, and the most transformative, though, and with the greatest opportunities too, in some ways too. Well, you're right. Yeah, we always say in the meetings, at the start of our meetings, that we stand on the shoulders, right, of those who came before us, and then they're standing on our shoulders, and we have that kind of continuity into the future, hopefully.
And I'm sure in your work also. So do you do group things as well as individual, or how do you?
Yeah.
I mean, I think about all that stuff. I know I've seen people that are in different situations here on Maui, and when it comes to support services, I don't want to knock anyone, but either they fall short because they don't have the skills, or they don't have the space, and they don't have the money to hire the people.
Right.
it's a monster here. So
Yeah.
I know what you're doing is super important.
Well,
How,
and we're so blessed that Sulera has stepped up to really, fund it so that money's
really?
not an issue. We can focus on the delivery of services. We don't have to constantly be scrambling to find out where we're going to get funded next.
Well, that's really, really good. I mean, I'm sure that both the teens and the parents in support of those teens like to know that they're working with a group that isn't driven by money. Many of these other things,
Yeah.
they say, okay, we've put $500,000 into this program. And when you look at the budget, you see that 385,000 is salaries, 50,000 is equipment and chairs, and 10,000 is the actual services. Wait, that was
Yeah.
$500,000. How'd we get down to 10,000?
Yeah. And it does
The
cost a
world
lot
is,
to operate these things
but
too, for
that is
sure.
not
Yeah.
you guys. That is really good.
Yeah.
Are
I'm really
you
grateful.
open yet, or when is that?
No. Unfortunately, we purchased the building for the shelter, and we need to do renovations on it. And of course, unfortunately, we submitted our plans to the County of Maui for renovations in December 2019, and we have still not received approval yet. And again, I don't want to knock anybody or anything. I
No.
understand the process and the needs, but so although we had a really good meeting with the mayor actually this week, and it sounds like we may be able to get some more motion on that soon. And then we have once we get the permit approval, we'll probably about another 4 or 5 months of actual construction, renovation work to make the shelter suitable for the youth. And then, so I'm kind of hoping we'll be open, by fall at the latest. In the meantime, there's a lot of work to get ready. We have to design our policies, procedures, work on our training programs for the staff. But in the meantime, also, we don't want to wait. So we've been starting some other programs. You talk about group programs. We started a teen collective virtual program. It's a kind of a group mentoring program, if you will, with where the teens ideally will lead it. And so, of course, the challenge of that, because we have initially the idea was, well, the teens would come in, we get to know them, then we can continue to do stuff with them. Now we have to try to get the teens to get to know us and somehow, feel comfortable enough to actually hang out with us and do stuff. And these are all, when I say us, I mean we've got a very diverse group of different ages, cultural backgrounds. We try to make a really nice group of adults who are well trained, background checked, vetted, safe people that can support the teens in getting together and then doing what they think is important and getting supporting each other, but also getting support from the adults. And the idea is, we gather, we do a mindful moment, we check in, we do a circle check in, we do some games, have some fun, and then maybe take it a little deeper if they're willing. What's a topic that we should maybe talk about today, or maybe someone's having a hard day, how can we give them support, and take that forward and do that week to week, so we could be a constant, consistent resource for the teens. So to get that kicked off, and again, we mentioned, I think by the time this airs, it will have already happened, but on March 27th, we're doing like a virtual party just to kind of, get the teens in so they can get to know us and see us and have some fun with us. And then hopefully from there, they'll be interested in taking it further and actually meeting and getting support in the form of the teen collective.
And your events are, I've seen, the flyer for the event. I'm sure that you have all kinds of people. What kind of, do you have quote staff, or is it just you're going to have a party basically?
Yeah, well, we have mentors who are volunteering already, right? So they're already
online.
Yeah, this is all virtual because of COVID, right? So it's all a big Zoom party, basically. So we're going to do games on Zoom. We're going to do giveaways of Amazon gift cards, and we got special We got Paige Alms is coming, and she's a surfer, a big wave surfer. And then we've got Sunny Kalama, who's a local performer, and she's going to perform and do some Q&A. They're both going to do Q&A, and then all kinds of different breakout rooms for games. And then we're going to do something called an open space with the youth if they're interested, where the idea is, again, they pick the topics they're interested in, right? And then we create rooms for each topic, and then they select themselves into those rooms to talk and do stuff with it. So it could be something like, could be as serious as climate change or racism, or it could be a video game that everybody likes or something, but they could do something in that room together, talk about it, maybe come up with an action plan, and then come back to the main group and talk about what they talked about. So it's a way for them to kind of explore on their own in a facilitated way.
What kind of, so this, I don't want to call it therapy. This is more like just fun, just creating an environment for people to talk.
This program,
and kind of, I don't want to say structured talk, but maybe that's what it is. It's like,
somewhat. And We use circle technology, we call it. People have been gathering in circles for thousands of years, just like Mankind Project. We gather in a circle, right? Of course, on Zoom, it's a virtual circle. You just pick an order, But the idea is that you have equity that way. Everybody gets a chance to speak. People don't interrupt each other, So we all get heard. We can all share, and then pass the talking piece to the next person. They get to share. That's generally the format we use for when it comes to like more meaningful or serious. So just how we check in, and it's how we deal with like talking about something serious, but then we have games where it's just all heck breaks loose, and we just kind of have fun too, because you don't want to be serious all the time. And it's not really therapy. It's therapeutic, but it's not therapy, right? So ideally it's providing support, but it's not like group therapy or anything like that. It's not that, it's not designed for that.
Well, it's interesting when I listen to you, I hear you're even in the way you're expressing it now. You're very organized. You're there. You're I don't want to say it's compartmentalized. I can really feel a sense of overall organization that is structured, but you give people beautiful room to be in I guess, to express themselves. Do you find that
Mm.
that your they're not really clients. Your guests kind of open up and express are getting they're liking it. I mean,
Well, again, we're just at the early stages. We've only had a few teens come so far, but they do seem to like it, and they have sort of opened up a little bit, and it takes time, to establish trust and rapport. So we're at the early stages of that with this program. I mean, on the other programs, though, yeah, I think it's important to have like consistency, structure, especially for anybody who's undergone any kind of trauma. We try to be what's called trauma informed, right? So we kind of assume, and it's nice because, you can kind of assume everybody has some kind of trauma in their life. And even if they don't, by being trauma informed, what that means is that you're just being kind of, making sure there's kind of a safety and structure, that we're gentle, that we're accepting, that we're empathic, that we're compassionate. That can't hurt anyway, right? So even if someone hasn't had trauma, that still feels good. So we just sort of assume that there may be trauma in the room, and then approach it that way with an open-hearted, structured, but a very open-hearted, flexible kind of a space. And people do generally, I've seen teens respond to that really, really well. Yeah.
as I'm sitting here, the thing that I'm aware of is because you're doing this and that and this, I'm trying to get a clarity.
Oh,
So
sorry. Yeah.
no, it's okay. I'm just thinking as a young person or anybody listen to the show, it's like, whoa. So what do these guys do? See, if
Oh,
someone
yeah.
gets into trouble and they're in the kind of court system, they're gonna be able to have a place like a breathing space after their incidents?
Oh, thanks for asking it that way, because I want to clarify. It's not just for people who are in trouble or in the court system. Like, in fact, we're not a holding facility, right? We're a voluntary place to be. Youth don't have to be here ever. I mean, we have an open door. They can now, of course, if they leave because they have guardians, we'd have to let the guardians know, right? Obviously, we can't just
Sure.
they can't just wander out and wander the streets. But we're not holding them there. We're not restraining them or restricting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's completely voluntary. That's why we want to create such a warm, welcoming space. We want them to want to be there. And it's not just, it could be for any teen. Like, I know, you've met my son, and that when he was a teen, we had some serious challenges with him. He's a strong personality, which, serves him well in the world. But when you're raising someone like that, it led to a lot of this, when we were growing up, especially between he and my wife, who's also a very strong woman. And yeah, so there were times where it would have been great if he could have like gone somewhere, for when he was 16, 17, gone somewhere for a few days, got some support. We could have gotten support as a family to reunify the family then in a healthier way, right? So it's like a respite kind of a space too for any teen really who might want it, or any family who might find that valuable. And so it could be for, I imagine we're going to get people from getting referrals from all walks of life, all different sources. I think initially, the impetus was from the police saying, we pick up these runaways, and it'd be nice if they had a short-term place to stay while we work out what's best for them and the families. But and we might get referrals from child welfare services, might be sending people our way, but I think really anybody, and that's why I want it to be a short-term facility. The idea is to resolve whatever the issues are, for the youth and their families. And ideally we go for family reunification, bringing the families back together using with offerings that we can direct them to in terms of referrals, or with programs that we could offer, like using our nonviolent communication skills or mediation skills, that we offer. but again, it's more broad-based. But that's why short-term, so that we can serve a wide range of youth, not just, we'll have 13 beds, but we don't want to just serve 13 youth for 12 years, that kind of thing, or whatever that would be, like 8 years, I guess, from 12 to 18. So we want to rotate people through and then really, have an impact, a broader impact on the community that way.
And then, so that program is called.
That's called Hale Pono Youth Shelter. Yeah, teen shelter.
So see what I mean about, I know that with my organization, they don't know what am I, mama, papa, dream.
Oh, thank you. So let me start at the top, right?
You can appreciate as a nonprofit, the Teran
Teran James Young Foundation has projects, exactly. So we've got different projects, right? So we've got the Hale Pono Teen Shelter. That's that project I just described. 30 days or less youth shelter for teens, 12 to 17, boys or girls. And that program is that's the shelter. That's the one I'm actually primarily running. And I'll be hiring lots of staff, so we're staffed with at least 3 adults, well-trained there, 24/7, very safe environment. Then we have our NVC Next Gen, which stands for a very big mouthful, nonviolent communication for the next generation. And you could Google nonviolent communication. It's actually not about nonviolence or communication so much. It's really more about how to create better relationships, I think, is how I look at it. It's the work of Marshall Rosenberg, bringing that into the school system. And really, beyond that, though, it's about creating what we call restorative schools. So schools that are trauma informed, like we talked about before, schools that are using like restorative principles. It's restorative versus punitive, so
well, it's interesting. Trauma informed. Those are interesting words.
Yeah, it's a buzzword now in the community. Yeah.
Which means?
It means being aware that there might be trauma. So the theory is that instead of looking at things like when kids have behavioral issues in school, the tendency is to think, well, it's a motivation issue, right? But if you look at researchers like Dr. Ross Green, he says, no, kids do well if they can and they're able to. It's more of an ability issue oftentimes. They just don't have the skills, or they've had traumatic experiences. We want to ask what's going on with the youth that's preventing them from being able to do well, as opposed to try to punish them, which would be counterproductive, because you can punish them all you like, but if they can't do it, if they don't have the emotional capacity or skills or resources to thrive, then it's really cruel. It's really kind of cruel to punish them, right? Because you're punishing based on something when it's not about motivation, it's about ability. So, we want to try to bring more of that. That's what trauma informed awareness is partly about.
So of someone bringing a youth to this program or allowing a youth to this program. So your education piece is initially to the big people.
Yes, exactly. We're not teaching the kids. We're actually when we go into the schools. Well, sometimes we will as a way to kind of gain an entry into the school. We'll run some classes for the kids, and the teachers get to see it. But our main goal is to get the whole school engaged in changing its culture, its practices, to be more compassionate, to be more connected, to have resource, to be able to serve everybody better. That's really the goal.
So Hale Pono
Youth Shelter, and then NVC Next Gen Restorative Schools, which is
out in the environment in the schools,
going into the schools, exactly. Right. And then we have Maluhia. So there's 4 entities. There's Hale Pono, NVC Next Gen, which is the restorative schools. Hale Pono is the youth shelter. Then we have Maluhia Mediation, which is a way of basically a service that we offer to anybody who is in conflict. Could be conflict between a husband and wife. It could be a conflict between 2 friends. It could be a conflict between 2 family members. It could be a conflict between you and your landlord. It could be any kind of conflict, really. We have a process for resolving conflicts in a very effective way that uses that nonviolent communication method to bring people into connection. Because what we notice is when you can bring people back into connection, they can collaborate and they can solve problems like that. It's magical. It really is. So we never even focus in our mediation. We don't really focus so much on the content of the issue. We get them underneath it to the underlying universal human needs that they're trying to meet. And when they meet at that level, they can connect. And when we connect, problems resolve. I used to, I think I mentioned that saved my marriage 5 years ago when we were having a really hard patch, and we went to see an NVC mediator and named Jory Mansky, who's here on the island. And she, we walked in to mediate a sort of a temporary separation to try that out, walked in there to mediate that, walked out back together again, and moved on, and have been wonderfully together ever since. And It's a great process. So we have the mediation services, and that's offered on a donation basis. So anybody can take advantage of it. And then we also have, and the final program we run is something called Restorative Justice Maui, and restorative justice is our efforts to bring this principle of restorative justice to the island and the system. Where again, it's how do I describe that in a nutshell? It's the idea of if you ever watch, like, Van Jones has a show called The Redemption Project, where you bring victims and offenders together, of course in a safe, very structured way, but it is predicated on the idea that if people are willing to sort of take accountability for what they've done, rather than just punishing, let's work towards actually helping them repair the harm that was done. Let's take it one step further.
I was going
And
to say,
actually, yeah,
I had my car broken into.
yeah,
And not only did that guy get jail, they gave him an option. One of them, I guess, was just like you're talking, restorative justice.
yeah.
So every so often I'm getting a check. It's
Yeah.
surely not, but it's in that direction of trying to get someone to take a more full responsibility for their actions and understand it. Besides the restorative justice incidents that I see, our whole world needs that brain.
It really, and a lot of countries have employed it. I think it's the primary way of justice, mode of justice in New Zealand, for example, and in other countries you see a lot more of it. And there's already been a push towards it on the Big Island. The prosecutor's office runs a restorative justice unit there, and offers the opportunity. Because if you think about it, if the way our system works right now, when you had your car broken into, that was a criminal charge, right? You were then pushed out of the system in a way, right? The state takes over and prosecutes and punishes on your behalf. So where does that leave you? Not with a lot of closure, and wouldn't it have been wonderful? What if you could have sat down with a guy who did that, right? And he got the opportunity to sort of explain what was going on, to try to make amends, right? And to the very least take accountability in front of you, so that you guys can connect at a human level again, and have a healing opportunity. It's like,
it is a major step of confrontation for me as, quote, the stuckee. It's big for everybody. It is a major step forward in growth.
It is.
For me to sit in the room with someone that broke into my car and lacerated my life, I'm going to grow quite a bit there myself.
And I should mention, we wouldn't just throw you two together, right? Obviously, if this process is speaking of structure, it's a very structured process. It could take sometimes 6 months to a year for a really intense, where you meet privately with people. You really get underneath. You help allow, so that when you get together, it's done in a very sort of structured way, so it's safe, and you have a chance to process through the feelings beforehand and really get to the place of. My favorite definition of forgiveness that someone taught me, a guy named Teran James, he created a grief recovery program in LA years ago. And he said, forgiveness is it's saying, I acknowledge that what you did hurt me, and I'm not going to let it hurt me anymore. Like, in other words, me holding on to anger and resentment. Another funny expression I heard is that resentment, anger, holding on to things, it's like drinking poison, hoping the other guy's going to die. So it's really more for my benefit to not forget or condone, right? But forgiving doesn't mean that. Forgiving means kind of moving on, coming back into sort of recognition that none of us are perfect, that we all sort of are doing the best we can with what we have in a given moment, and that just because someone does something regrettable in one moment doesn't define their whole life, ideally, who they are. It's healing.
The kind of thing you're bringing to it, just by hearing your sharing, you bring a level of compassion that I would like to see out there.
Trust me, I have my moments.
No, but I think about recently, Genesis was letting us know that he's been working with others, but Tina Wildberger in our state house here in Hawaii, to bring restorative justice really much more prominently, which
into the fore.
That's
in fact, just 2 days. I think it was just 2 days ago. It was 2 days ago now. The House and the Senate both passed a resolution that stated that we were going to bring this restorative justice concept into the school system, right? So that rather than just punishing kids, we try to do more in terms of repairing harm.
And like we say, the kids is one thing. It's the big people, I mean,
Right. Right.
it's our whole society that needs, more than a dose of this. We need to jump in the pool and not get out. It's like we have to.
Which is why we're focusing on the next generation, right? Because ideally, if they grow up with that experience of having that, they're going to want it more, and then that'll permeate hopefully into our society because they're the future leaders of the world.
And a great example of, just like we talk about in Mankind Project, and that we are the shoulders that the future will stand on. So what are we serving up here? And so what you're serving up is building blocks for life, and really the words restorative justice. I mean, hopefully that brings air into your lungs.
The whole idea of it is it's this idea. It really, I don't know who was telling me this, but that when they said it, this nonviolent communication, it's really about like just love, but in the sense of love, in the sense of my definition of love is wanting the best for. So loving myself means wanting the best for myself, but loving others means wanting the best for the other person, and ideally we want that equally, not more or less. If I love others more than myself, I'm codependent and I'm hurting myself, right? That's not healthy. But if I love myself more than others, then I'm selfish, and that's not necessarily healthy either. It's that balance, right? That harmony of caring about, and that's why I like NVC, because it focuses on our universal human needs: love, connection, meaning, purpose, safety, sustenance, those things that enrich and sustain life. And we all have the same needs. They're universal, and they connect us. And when we can meet at that level versus the problem doesn't come in the needs. Needs are never in conflict, right? In other words, a classic one with parents and children, kids need what we call autonomy. Autonomy means I decide, I have my choice, my freedom, I decide, I want to choose what I do. And that there's that need, right? And that's a strong need to make life more wonderful for people. Everybody has that need to some degree. Parents, though, there's this need for safety that they're thinking about, right? So, they want to make sure that there's safety and protection for the youth. And those two things seem at odds a lot of the time, but it's not. It's just the strategies that we're employing to get those needs met. Right. So when we can loosen up our attachment to like what I want to do to get that need met. Do I want to go to the kid wants to go drink at the party, for example, or, drive his car at 110 miles an hour down a back road, whatever it is, right? That's a strategy, right? And the parents want, some parents, if they had their way, those kids would never leave the house, they'd be there forever. But that strategy meets one need, but it doesn't meet the other, right? But when we can collaborate, when we get together and recognize, okay, let's talk about this. You want choice and freedom. I want your safety. What can we kind of come up with that's going to meet both those needs, right? Then we're collaborating, right? We're getting creative to find strategies that meet all the needs. And that's the kind of world I want to live in.
Do you have to establish the rapport between the two parties openly when they do that discussion? I mean,
well, that's how the mediation process works, to be honest. When you come into an NVC mediation, I can just walk you through it. And when you come into an NVC mediation, you only have to make two agreements. One is that we're not going to interrupt each other, so that you have some kind of order, right? Which is tempting sometimes, right? In an argument. So we're just going to have one person talk at a time. And the other agreement we have to make is that I'm going to kind of listen to the one person, catch a phrase that sort of summarizes what they're saying. And then I have the other person repeat that phrase. Are you willing to do that? Usually they say, yes, fine. Well, what I'm doing really is I'm listening underneath what they're saying to what is that need that they're expressing. So what you're saying is you really just want some safety, right? You're usually valuing safety right now. Is that right? And they say, yes. They say, great. James, can you please say that Susan really values safety right now? And what that does is it connects him to her at that level where you can't argue that. You know what I mean? You could argue the strategies, but the idea is we're building connection. We're bringing them together. We're starting to get some connection, collaboration going, so that when we start getting all the needs identified, Marshall Rosenberg, the guy who created this stuff, said, once you get people, if they can express each other's needs, when they're at that level, resolution is about 20 minutes or less away, because they're going to start getting creative in how they meet those needs. It's like, imagine we're on opposite sides of the table and we're doing this, right? By sort of when I start getting into what are the needs, it kind of moves me around to your side of the table. And now we're moving together in the same direction, And to me, it's magical. It really is when it works. It's great.
I'm sure you might imagine that's why this show is called The Neutral Zone.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It is
Oh, it
anything
wasn't a
but neutral. It's like
it wasn't a Romulan reference, Jason.
once we don't go fighting each other and we're in an environment where we kind of relate to each other, miracles can happen, you know?
Exactly. You caught the essence of it. That's beautiful. You missed my Star Trek joke there, didn't you?
Oh, let me hear it.
Are you a Star Trek fan at all?
I'm sure. How could
Yeah.
one not be?
Well, in Star Trek, there's a place called the Neutral Zone. It was between Romulan and Federation space. So it just made me think of that too. I'm a total geek. I should mention that up front.
Well, and I saw The Man in the High Castle. Have you seen that?
I love that show. That was great. Yeah, brilliant.
That was a really. I didn't even think about that when I thought about the neutral zone. I was just thinking of when I was doing politics. It's like, why are we always combative? Why don't we just come and really share issues in a new and collaborative way where there is no adversary? And
it's a beautiful vision. Yeah.
And seems to be the world needs that, you know. It's
well, especially with how social media reinforces what you already like, right? And so it just builds these bubbles of truth, you know, that are in these reinforcing and re-entrenching us into separate camps. So yeah, so now more than ever, it's important to come together in a space of like, and that's again what needs do, right? Because we all have the same needs, so that's what unifies us. You know, and so when we have what we call needs consciousness, you know, we come into that space of neutrality where with needs consciousness, and then we want to come back to our natural. Marshall Rosenberg said, our natural state of being is to be compassionately giving and receiving. That's what we want. You know, we're tribal creatures in a way, right? We are group creatures, and we want to relate and give. It feels good. I mean, I worry sometimes that like sometimes people worry like, well, what's their agenda? You know, what are they really after? What are they doing with these kids? You know, it's like it's pretty simple. You know, we have a need to contribute and to have purpose and meaning. And you know what I mean? That's a need of everybody really to some degree. And this fulfills that, you know, we really do just want to be of service. You know, there's a value to that. And it's kind of selfish, right? I like doing this because it feels good to help people. You know, it may sound silly, but it really, I don't think everybody's had that experience when they help someone, you know, to bigger or lesser degree. It feels good. And then you want more of it. You know, that's really the motivation.
Well, and I very much appreciate that in you.
Thanks.
It's like what I feel with you is tremendous freedom, like and freedom inside a structure. You know,
yeah.
Really, I don't know if that makes sense.
That's the goal of parenting, I think. Create freedom within structure. Yeah. I have two kids, right? So I've raised two.
You exude that. If I was a kid listening to this show, I'd say, how do I get to see this David Litman guy?
Yeah, hopefully. I do. I mean, it seems to work well. You know, it's funny. What we say in the mentoring world is we want a llama and not FARP, right? And we say this in the men's work too. Remember, llama is an acronym and FARP is an acronym. So llama stands for listen, just listen, not, you know, listen more than I speak, accept, just unconditional positive regard for who they are as a person, you know, model, certainly be a model of healthy behavior, right? Speak from the I language though, you know, not you, right? And just be the change I want to see in the world, right? Model, and then appreciate and celebrate, you know, with them, right? That's how I try to work with youth mostly, and they respond to that versus what a lot of people do, which is we call FARP, which kind of sounds horrible, and it is. F stands for fixing, you know, like, oh, there's something wrong with you, I'm going to fix you, you know, I'm going to give you, and then A stands for advice, right? Giving advice, you know, which I think unsolicited advice is kind of abusive in a way. So versus if it's asked for, that's one thing, right? But unsolicited advice, you know, you don't want to do that. So fixing, advising, rescuing, thinking we have to rescue, you know, or projecting my stuff. So FARP, F-A-R-P, fix, advise, rescue, project, you know, we want to stay away from that and just listen, accept, model, and appreciate. And I didn't make up that, but I try to embody it as much as I can.
And as a coach and therapist, like, it seems like that would be, I don't want to say a step above, let's say a very available, and people coming into your environment aren't being threatened. They're being given a freedom.
That's exactly what you said. Freedom within structure. You know, it's like it's important. You know,
Very beautiful.
I tend to think of. Oh, sorry. I tend to think of like therapy. I had a friend who was a corporate consultant, and he wrote this doctorate about consulting as jazz, and I think it can be applied to this work too, because he said, you know, some approaches are very much like classical music. You know, very structured, right? Everything's very rigid and structured and procedural and methodology. and you adhere to that, and that does provide some people, that provides a real sense of safety and structure, and you can sort of measure it and be scientific. But to be honest, I think humans are too complex for a one size fits all modality. So jazz, he said, is a little different. In jazz, there's a theme. People are playing a song. There's a general core musical, thing being played, but everybody's riffing off each other. They're responding to the needs of the moment. They're being flexible. They're bringing new things in, way more dynamic and alive. And that's how I like to do work with people.
Well, it's interesting you bring up music as your example. You also are a multifaceted being. I mean, when I say the word music, I know David Litman also plays guitar and sings and
Yeah.
writes, and you
Yeah.
got a
Music's a big
musical
part of our
family.
life. Yeah. And my daughter's really taken that to the next level. For me, it's always been a hobby. I kind of toyed with that idea, right? In my young years, should I do the music thing? Should I go for it? And I love music. And for me, I knew it was always going to be a big part of my life, but always as more of a hobby. It's something I do to connect, to unwind, to express, and I enjoy it, but never enough to like make a career out of it. But my daughter, she took my guitar at age 13 and started writing songs, and so she's really trying to get herself launched as a musical artist, and she's got some pretty strong talent. We just did that show at the Empanada Lady
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, and it was great. It was fun. But yeah, we're definitely a musical family, and of course, my wife's a painter, artist, and she's, so we love, we were kind of the opposite. A lot of families, they want their kids to grow up to be doctors and lawyers, and we wanted our kids to grow up to be like artists and actors and spiritual teachers and that kind of thing. And we'll see where they end up. Hopefully they're, whatever they do, we're going to support them, of course. But
Well,
that's our,
I think that they've got great role models in you and your wife.
yeah, thanks.
And I remember when I grew up, my parents, not so much, but aunt and uncle, they thought I should work at the post office, a real stable job with
Yes.
benefits. It's like,
Yes. And why, for some people, that's, again, it's really kind of what strategies to meet needs. As long
remember
as
in
you can
those
get.
years when people would go to a job, work 40 years, and then that was their life, And
So not typical anymore, though, right? In today's world.
now
Yeah.
it's like, how many times per year do you move? It's like
Flexible society. Yeah, it's very different. Yeah. And who's to say if it's better or worse? It's just different strategies to meet needs. And some people do still. I was just talking to a woman, we met at one of my wife's high school classmates came out to the island, and she hadn't seen her in 32 years, so we met up with them last night on the beach in West Side, and just hung out with them. And she's worked in the same school system for 25 years, as a counselor, and was very happy about that. But her husband has been like boing, 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 all over the place,
right.
So both paths are equally valid potentially.
Well, you are. I mean, I'm saying this when
Oh
I'm.
yeah.
What's really exciting about when I speak to you, maybe it's just me. I've known you so long. I look at
Yeah.
it, but when someone comes at you to try to hit you, it's not that you avoid it. You have a way of smoothing out the edges of
Yes.
looking at
Thank you for putting
things
it that way.
and framing it in a way that is you're responsive and you make room for someone's comment. It's a really, I don't know if you identify it that way, but I can tell.
Totally do. I totally do. It's funny. You have to forgive me. I love analogies. I'm a huge analogy guy, but it's just it seems to be effective sometimes to teach that way and to explain things. But if you look at certain martial arts, right? When I was a kid, I took karate class, because I was bullied and I wanted to fight back, and so I took karate, and it was very like linear. Karate is very linear martial art. Taekwondo, karate, very linear martial arts. Kick, punch, but you block, right? Force blocks force, so very direct. But then I started, and I haven't studied this yet, but I really want to learn Aikido or Tai Chi. Those are circular martial arts, right? So when a punch comes in Aikido, you don't block it. You move with the energy, right? And then redirect. And there's this thing called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's a structured way of doing therapeutic approaches, and more of a cognitive behavioral approach for therapy. They've got different techniques, but a big thing in NLP is all about building rapport, building that rapport, right? Moving is pacing, they call it pacing, like moving with somebody. First you pace, then you lead, you know? and it comes back to Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People guy, right? He said, seek first to understand, then seek to be understood, right? So it just makes us more effective when we can sort of match someone's where they, meeting people where they are, and then gently, guiding as opposed to being abrasive. There is a place at times like to be abrasive too. It can. There's something in NLP called the pattern interrupt, where people get in these patterns, right, and they get stuck in these habits and patterns, and sometimes if you can just do something drastic to break it, it's like when someone has hiccups, you scare them, right? To shock them out of it, kind of that modality that can work, and there's a place for that too. But I think more often it's effective to move with somebody, and then what about this? Ben Franklin was a master at that. Actually, he would gently suggest changes as opposed to beat people over the head with them.
Now, you probably, as we're talking, think we've just been talking a few minutes. Can you believe we've been talking almost an hour? But
sure. Oh my gosh.
Well,
Time flies, right?
and when I'm listening to you, it's just my opinion, but I hear so much meat in this structure. And when you're bringing up people, it shows me, if I were a parent, well, this guy is really flexible. He's really aware of the range of things, and yet he leaves room. I could see where I could put my child, my youth, in this environment, and they might really get some great insights. In fact, so might I. I
hope
hope
so.
that
Yeah.
I hope we're going to put your name and things up on the screen. I know you got it there behind the whole time, but we'll put it bigger, because I think that the more that people will look at you and the work that you're doing, the more they're going to see multiple opportunities for themselves and their family in many ways, or people they know.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm
We
really
look forward
glad
to being
you
of
came.
service for sure,
Yeah, I think Genesis was quite wise in finding you, and
Well, I'm grateful for sure.
and any important things, like if we got through this hour and you say, "Oh, I really wanted to say," anything that comes to mind that you want to deliver to an audience.
Wow. Yeah, seek first to understand, then seek to be understood. If you want to improve your life, go for empathy first. And empathy is not agreeing with people. Empathy is not feeling what they're feeling, even. It's just simply having a sincere desire to understand their side of things, understand what their universal needs are. And if we can approach things that way, I think, we just have a much more peaceful world,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful, and of all the things to say, that was the perfect thing, David.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and chat with you. You're as we say in Judaism, you're a mensch.
Well, I try to be a host. Sometimes I get on my
There we
own
go.
rants and go out,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
try to be there so that someone can put out. When I do all these
Yeah,
interviews all these years with people, with politicians, I'm different in that I'm not there attacking. I'm there
right.
to receive and let someone be more and more of who they are and share
Yeah,
that.
you're a wonderful model to what we've been talking about. Really, I think. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, world, you have seen a doorway into David Litman and a host of wonderful services. I could name them here, but I think you should go up to the
Yeah,
website and
let's check it out.
explore for sure.
Thanks,
David,
Jason.
it's really been a pleasure here with you. I hope that if there's anything that you ever want to share, you always have an open door here with me.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Yeah.
And all you people out there in radio, TV, do we have TV anymore? I think we still have TV. And in the media, it's wonderful when you spend this time here with me. I'm very appreciative. I am your host, Jason Schwartz. And David Litman, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Thanks again.
And all you out there, we will see you again. Have a wonderful week. Aloha.